it's time to be an angry Tennessee fan. And the reason I say that is because awards finalists came out yesterday. Tim Banks is up for the Boreals Award. Congratulations to him. Well deserved. But Tennessee's Dylan Sampson was left off of the Doak Walker Award finalist list. Despite the fact that Dylan Sampson just set 3 weeks ago set the all-time single season rushing touchdown record in Tennessee. Last week, set the all-time scoring record at Tennessee. Leads the SEC with 22 rushing touchdowns and could break Derrick Henry's SEC all-time record for scoring before it's all said and done. Leads the SEC in rushing and is on track to set Tennessee's all-time single-season rushing record, breaking Travis Stevens. If he goes for 100 yards and then in just 2 more games, he will have it, and he will have done it in as many games as Travis Stevens did at 13. Somehow, that wasn't enough for him to be on the Heisman list. I'm sorry, not Heisman, Doak Walker list. The players on it, Boise State's Ashton Jeanty. No issue there. Ashton Jeanty has over 2,000 yards rushing, 27 touchdowns, clear of the field in both categories, and averaging 7.5 yards a carry. I get he has easier competition, but you can't ignore that. Caleb Johnson plays Big Ten ball. I'll give him credit. Over 6.5 yards a carry, 21 touchdowns, 1,492 yards total. Fair enough. Amari Hampton of the North Carolina Tar Heels is number 3, averaging just over 5.5 yards a carry with just 14 touchdowns and 1,475 yards rushing. Amari and Hampton does not belong on this list. And this is my poll question for you guys, and I want to get into it because it's going to expose something. Why was Dylan Sampson snubbed of being a Doak Walker finalist? They hate Tennessee, or the committee is lazy? That's the question. I'm going to be honest with you guys. Maybe they do hate Tennessee, but truth be told, the committee's lazy. They just took the 3 leading rushers in college football this year and made them their finalist. That's pathetic. It's not how you do football, guys. You look at rushing efficiency, scoring, support from your passing game, level of competition, quality of offensive line. You take all that into account when you are doing these finalists. And they didn't do any of that. They just took the 3 top rushers. Because if they were serious, RJ Harvey at UCF is more impressive. Let's stop with Dylan Sampson for a moment. RJ Harvey at UCF has 1,458 yards. That's 17 fewer yards than Hampton, but he's averaging 7 yards a carry, 6.9 to be exact, nearly a yard and a half more than Hampton, and he has 7 more touchdowns at 21. Trey Stewart at Jacksonville State, 1,318, averaging 6.1 yards a carry, 19 touchdowns. You can have Hampton ahead of him because of the level of competition. Taj Brooks at Texas Tech, you can also have Hampton ahead of him. He has fewer rushing yards, and he's only averaging 5 yards per carry, so fewer yards per carry, and has as many touchdowns. Fair enough. Dylan Sampson is 7th in rushing, and he has 1,307 yards, and he's averaging just as many yards per carry as Hampton, despite having 168 yards fewer. But he has 8 more touchdowns, 22 touchdowns on the year. When someone is this clear of the SEC or the Big Ten in rushing, it's absolutely ridiculous to not put them on the Doak Walker Award finalist list. And Dylan Sampson joins a long tradition of Tennesseans getting screwed out of awards. We're going to talk more about this in a second. First, the show brought to you by Newberg Collision Center.
5th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. If you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe Newbert Collision Center.
All right, so let's do the history of the Doak Walker real quick, because this isn't the first time laziness from voters cost them. For those of you who don't remember, this was 23 years ago. Travis Stevens led the SEC in rushing. He was a finalist for the Doak Walker Award, and he lost it out to Luke Staley at BYU, with voters not paying attention at all to the level of competition that was faced. Now, Philip Fulmer, having Travis Stevens fly out to New York for the Doak Walker Award finalist list was a big mistake. For those who don't know, John Henderson and Travis Stevens flew up to New York the Thursday for the awards presentation ceremony, and they had the SEC title game on Saturday. And it was an SEC title game to play for to go to the national title. And Tennessee lost to LSU that day. It's one of the worst losses in Tennessee history. Probably the worst loss. 2003, Dustin Colquitt was robbed of the Ray Guy Award. We don't even need to get that. That's to the best punter, by the way. When he single-handedly won 2 games for Tennessee that year, Miami and South Carolina. We don't even need to get to the Heisman snubs. Heath Sherler being second to Charlie Ward, no one was going to debate that. Peyton Manning, we've talked about enough. Like, not winning over Charles Woodson was egregious. Hendon Hooker not going to New York at all was egregious. Johnny Majors in 1956 losing to Paul Hornung was egregious. Now, Jim Brown probably should have won that Heisman anyway, and Majors did finish ahead of Jim Brown. But Majors still should have at least finished ahead of Paul Hornung, and so should have Jim Brown. Hank Larcella in 1951 should have won the Heisman, and then Gene McKeever in 1929 would have won the Heisman had there been the award back then. But you're going to retroactively award Gene McKeever the Heisman for 1929, but Dylan Sampson breaks all of Gene McKeever's records at Tennessee this year, and he's not even a finalist for the best player at his position? That's insane. I'm sorry. That's absolutely ridiculous. Mike C said Samson had fumble problems. I wouldn't trade him, though. Only one of those fumbles is his fault. 2 of those were helmets on the ball. One of them, he was held up and then a helmet was put on a ball. So I'm giving him a break on that. So yes, this is award snubbing for Tennessee in just the worst, grossest way. And again, Dylan Sampson's not the only one who should be mad. RJ Harvey has 17 fewer yards and is averaging 1.2 more yards per carry and has 7 more touchdowns than Amari Hampton. He's at UCF. Unless you really think the Big 12 is that much of a step below the ACC, I don't know how you could possibly justify Harvey being behind Hampton. Again, Trey Stewart and Taj Brooks deserve to be below them. Dylan Sampson, though, should be in over all of them. He just should. He should get the 3rd spot. Someone that clear of the toughest conference in the nation, or at least one of the top 2 toughest conferences in the nation. Someone that clear of everybody running the ball should get there. And Tennessee this year has not been what they expected to be passing the ball. So Josh Heupel has had to rely more on Dylan Sampson, and he has been a second-half machine. So it's absolutely ridiculous that Dylan Sampson is not up for the Doak Walker Award. That's embarrassing. And I think this really exposes the committee as lazy. So the poll question, why was Dylan Sampson snubbed of being a Doak Walker finalist? They hate Tennessee. The committee is lazy. Guys, it's 50-50. It's 50-50. We got 37 votes coming in. It's 50-50. And I mean, it's tough. I would say the committee's just lazy. And my evidence of the committee's just lazy is Dylan Sampson's not the only victim of this. Again, RJ Harvey can claim to be a victim of this. DJ Giddens of Kansas State could claim to be a victim of this. Maybe. That one's a little bit trickier. The most clear-cut one, though, is RJ Harvey. The big debate comes down to Harvey or Dylan Sampson. Harvey does have better numbers than Sampson all the way around. Comparable touchdowns, averaging 1.2 more yards per carry, and has 151 yards more. But Dylan Sampson's playing in the SEC. So it's kind of a wash. It is kind of a wash, but I maintain that in general, it's kind of egregious to sit there and say that Dylan Sampson should not be a Doak Walker Award finalist. Chalk him up to the list of Tennessee players robbed by awards. Now, Tennessee has won awards in the past. Steve DeLong won the Outland Trophy in the 60s. John Henderson won the Outland Trophy in 2000, right in 2000. Eric Berry won the Thorpe Award in 2010. By the way, when I talk about award snubs, he won it in 2009. Eric Berry was snubbed of the Thorpe Award in 2008. He should have won it both years. Probably should have won it in 2008 over 2009, if we're being honest. He was more of a linebacker in 2009 under Monty Kiffin. And, of course, Jalen Hyatt did win the Biletnikoff Award in 2022. Nobody could ignore Jalen Hyatt, though. I mean, that was just crazy. So, yes, Tennessee has had some very surprising award snubs. I'm not saying Dylan Sampson should have won the Heisman. You can make the case for Ashton Jeanty, despite Jeanty's easy level of competition. His numbers are just outlandish, so I'm fine with that. But I don't see how in the world you could say that that Dylan Sampson does not deserve to be a Heisman finalist.